I'm from Stalybridge, so don't throw things at me. Um, my favourite joke is really a Billy Connolly one. He talks about how kids can't appreciate the kind of scenery that we have around us. And he talks about when he was driving up through the lochs and past the mountains, all of a sudden he rounded the corner and Mum and Dad went, wow! And the kids went, what? They just got no grasp whatsoever of how beautiful mountains are. They're expected to see some real action. But I must say, I've done the right thing by moving over here, because I've now got a 3-year-old myself who will actually, when we're driving up onto Melford Moor, he'll go, whoa, look at that! And he memes the scenery, and I think I've definitely brainwashed him quite well. So thanks to my parents for getting me into this side of things. Peaking with Brian. Brian next door was an unusual 11-year-old, never smiling, never talking at all really, but escaping the cramped 2-bedroom terrace which he shared with his parents and 2 brothers and going out for a trip in the car, well, that was an offer he wasn't going to refuse. As our ancient Viva dissected its way through the posh part of Greenfield, Dad attempted a geography lesson. Something about the backbone of England, but I was battling not to be sick onto my rucksack. The sharp bends of the moorland roads were having their usual effect. Brian, as always, looked like he wasn't listening either. He was drawing pictures of small square things on the window's condensation. Brian, according to who you talked to, was considered to be weird, naughty or slow, even a few bricks short. Some of the more horrible kids at school called him a mentalist. But for me, he was just Brian from next door, a bit different, but a good friend. He didn't get on well with adults though, who felt that his refusal to speak to them was either rude or strange. With barely any social skills, an inability to do as he was told, and explosive temper tantrums, he could be a difficult child to deal with. At school, he was frequently bullied by the other boys. Sometimes I got into trouble myself for defending him. Once out of the car and ambling along the Pennine Way, I was in ecstasy. It was everything I had hoped it would be. Colluding greys, greens, fawns, taups, browns, purples, sky never ending. Brian struggled behind us bravely. He seemed less impressed than I was with the experience, but was giving it his best. Springing on the peak like a pre-adolescent Tigger, I would call out, "So where are we going, Dad? Are we just walking for the sake of it? That's balmy." Dad would ignore me and glance at his map. The moorland road had disappeared behind us over an hour ago. We seemed to be in the middle of a huge nowhere. The emptiness beautiful, but unfathomable. Not a building, not a vehicle, not even a dry stone wall to be seen up here. All of a sudden, Dad bent down and tugged something that was poking out of the bedraggled turf of heather. A half-exposed bit of metal. He picked it up and handed it to me. It was the size of my hand. A rusted old cogwheel, heavy and cold to hold. I glanced towards Brian. He had the look of somebody who'd been dragged on a rather pointless route march. Walking isn't for everyone, I thought to myself, but at least he was being obedient and he hadn't once been badly behaved. "What's that then?" I asked, nodding towards an arc of metal in the ground, the size of a large barrel. Dad's eyes rolled heavenward, exasperated. "It's the engine cover. Honestly, you never listen to a word that I say. I keep saying that we're going to be trying to locate one of the crashed aeroplanes from World War II up on the moors. There's quite a few." Brian caught our attention. He suddenly scampered ahead of us into the shallow ditch, crouching down, running his finger gently along the curve of the metal. He was entranced. Then he pushed his NHS specs back onto his nose and chanted towards the dappled grey sky, never to us. "The Boeing B-17 flying Fortress A, Fortress B-175433767 bomb group, USSAF, first flying in 1935. During the Allied air offensive, it was used as a heavy bomber. About 13,000 were produced, and they were used primarily in the Southwest Pacific and Southeast Asia. It weighed 17 tons and was travelling at 100 miles an hour when it crashed on the 6th of April 1945 on Melford Moor due to fog. It was on a routine training flight, and therefore it did not carry a full crew, but only contained just 5 crew members." Dad and I looked at each other. Neither of us had ever seen Brian so animated. "Bloody hell," said Dad. "Where did he get that from?" I shook my head, but gestured towards a small pamphlet Dad was carrying with him. "He must have picked up your guidebook in the back seat of the car for a few minutes. He reads a lot. He remembers things, usually just TV adverts though." That morning, we spent a long time, amazed, but listening, as Brian regaled aviation facts and figures to us. After returning to the car, Brian addressed his lap, softly saying, "I'd like to go again." My dad, eyes surprised in the rearview mirror, told him, "You don't have a choice, Brian. You're the best guide we could have asked for. We'll do Old Moss next. I'd never seen Brian smile so broadly. He spoke softly to us, to the window, tracing the rolling moors outside with a stubby finger against the glass. Sabre of RAF, a West reference 094051, Great Hill Home, Moss crashed 18th of December 1954. Here we come.